In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this 8-drawer dresser using ash and a little bit of plywood. So for this build, I'm going to be using 13/16 straight line ash. So that means it's already milled to 13/16 of an inch, and I have one straight edge on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start roughing out the length of boards that I'm going to be using. And once I get those into a pile, I'm going to rip my rough edge down so that way I have two straight edges and my boards are completely ready to be used. Alright, so here I'm going to start my first of 4 panels. I'm going to mark out the spots for biscuits, so this helps with the alignment so I have less work to do when it comes to sanding and getting glue off. The biscuits don't add strength or anything, it's just strictly for alignment. Alright, and then I'm going to start roughing out the length for the side panels. And this is all just rough. I'll cut it to its exact size once the panels are glued up. Rip the rough edge off. And then laying out the grain orientation that I want. Marking for biscuits again. And if you don't have a biscuit joiner, you don't need it. It just makes things a little bit easier. I'm also using those wood cauls right there to make sure that my panels are as flat as possible. And then once I have everything out of clamps, I will scrape off any excess glue that I have before I start sanding. And then here I'm going to cut my pieces to length, so I will clamp them together and make the cut with my track saw. When doing this, don't take the clamps off so that way your pieces don't move, so you get two perfectly pieces at the same size. Then I'll take it over to the table saw and rip down to its final width. And then I didn't show it in the video, but repeat this step for the side panels as well, clamping them together, cutting them to the length, and then ripping them down with the table saw. And then here I'm going to use a 1/2-inch spiral bit to do a little dado, half lap, whatever you like to call it, that the side panels will sit in. And then here when I went to glue it up, I was very unprepared and I shouldn't have done it on the workbench. It was too tall. So you'll see me here have to slide it down and move it around a little bit to get all 4 pieces together. And I'm also using clamps and also just some ratcheting tie downs to hold everything in place. And here I'm going to be cutting the center divider for the dresser. This is where I'm going to use some plywood because you're never going to see it, so I'm not going to make another panel of hardwood just for something that you'll never see. And then I'm going to do a little stop dado. Here you'll see me cut out a little tongue out of the plywood. And I'm cutting this to 1/4 of an inch. And then I will set up a guide for the inside of the dresser and run a 1/4 inch bit on the top and the bottom for that piece of plywood to slide into. And then you'll see it'll slide in just like so. And then I'll add a strip of ash to the front so that way you'll never even know that it's plywood. Alright, and then here I'm going to add some dowels to the half lap so that way it gives it a little bit more strength. I'm just marking the center, using the tape to prevent blowout, using a 1/2 inch Forstner bit to drill the holes, and then just filling it with 1/2 inch oak dowels. And then sanding it all flush. And then on the bottom I'm not doing anything fancy, just putting a couple little pieces of ash for the feet, because that's what the dresser is going to sit on. And then here I'll use pocket holes to make a little face frame to separate the drawers. And then I like to cut like little scrap pieces so that way I get a consistent spacing every time. I do anything I can to avoid measuring. Again, another scrap piece. You could definitely get a shelf drawer jig that would be a lot easier, and also I don't recommend using these drawer slides. They're not very nice, but they are like $5, so if you're on a budget. And then here I'm going to start ripping down my drawer boxes. I'm using 3/4 inch plywood for the boxes, and then a 1/4 inch piece for the bottom of the boxes. Alright, so here I'll set up my fence, run all my pieces through, and then I'll move the fence to get that 1/4 inch dado. Then I glue all my pieces together and brad nail them. You could do pocket holes, you could do a few different ways to do it, but brad nails and glue are pretty strong. And then I'll cut out my bottom, slide it into place. Then I add my drawer fronts, just clamp them in and throw a couple screws back there, holds it in place perfect. And then adding the drawer slides. And I finished it all with a matte polyurethane, 3 coats, sanding in between coats. I hope the video was helpful. Let me know what you thought.